Hey, hello, I think. Hello. Okay, so I think we're good. Woo. Okay, can you hear me now? You can hear me now, correct? Well, I don't know if you can hear me. Is this Mayor? Mayor Mistrik? Mistrik, sorry. uh, Hold on. Uh, yes, this is Mayor Mystery, I believe. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I'm sorry. Okay, so I think we're back. So I think I have audio now, and I think I should be good. Okay, so I think we can start. Okay, mental preparation. A little bit of a top up. Look at this. Look at this. I'm gonna burn my face. Okay, well, here we go. Three, two, one. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jose Luis. This is Parametric Camp. We do computational and hacky, but also creative and artsy and designy. It's a YouTube channel where we like having fun, doing creative stuff, using computation as a technique. That's probably a good summary. So, if you're new to the channel, make sure you check out our videos, our playlists. We record a lot of tutorials. We do them live. Then you can check them out. We make playlists which basically feel like courses that you can take, etc., etc. And then, what are we going to do this afternoon? So, last Tuesday I was live streaming, and what was I doing? Last Tuesday I was live streaming, and in the live stream what was I doing? And in the live stream, we took a look at the Dall-E API because Dall-E just released, just opened their API. So now we can get image requests from the apps that we can develop. So I made a video explaining what the Dall-E API is. And I also made a video on how to use it from the terminal. I made a video about how to use it in Python. And then today, what I would like to do is I would like to show you how to do. We were halfway through recording a video in Node.js, how to use the API in Node.js. Today, I would like to finish that and then move on to other examples, like, for example, Grasshopper, P5, VAS, etc., etc. So that's going to be fun. But before we start the actual recording of the video, I need to. Last week, I stopped the recording because internet went out in my apartment, so I couldn't really test out things with the API. And so I need to finish the example today, and then we will catch up with the video. So let's get busy with that. So if I believe that we were here, I had Dall-E, and I had Visual Studio Code open somewhere, and somewhere like here. And let me actually pull up the video from last time. I think I was somewhere here. Yeah, and this is when things broke. So I had Dall-E generate and I had Dall-E with no modules. So that's what I wanted to do. Wait. Can I pick your nose? Can I give myself a kissy? Anyway, so I'm gonna put this here on the side to remind myself of where I was. Yes, and then I would like to probably open here. I would probably like to open here in Node.js. I would like to open a terminal here. All right, and then we have the terminal over there. We have these files here, and I had a browser here open with the Dall-E API. I believe that's where we were last time. Is the sound still there? Yes. Dall-E API. read the documentation, etc. Images, create image. We were somewhere here, correct? Yes. So I did Dall-E with arguments, and I was halfway. Yes, Dall-E. This is what we had. And then Dall-E with arguments. And then what I was doing was I was transitioning. So, and this worked. Let me see if this worked. So it was node and then Dall-E generate with arguments and then P a monkey in a ballerina dress and then number 2 and then size was 512. And then if I do this, I should get a prediction, correct? And I should get predictions saved in the file system. Writing an image and then a monkey in a ballerina dress. Yes, that is so surprisingly good. That's crazy. Anyway, so this is working. And what I was doing that was not working was Dall-E no modules. And actually, you know what? I don't like this. I'm going to totally rewrite this because I don't like where this was going. So I actually do have some examples somewhere that I want to reuse. Okay, yeah. And I want to use the fetch API because I have Node 18. Yes. So I'm going to do this, but here I have arguments. So I'm going to, I'm just putting together the example and then I will show it and I explain what it's doing and why it's awesome. So I'm going to close this here. I'm going to require this. So I'm going to keep this. Why is this? Okay. Command line arguments, the key, I'm taking it from the, yes, I'm taking it from the environment, the request body. The request body is options prompt or number response format is 364. Request options, this is going to be different here. That request parameters. So this is what I want to do here. Yeah, this is all that I want to change here. I don't like this. So request params. All right. And then the Dall-E endpoint is going to be here. Dall-E endpoint. And this is the request body here. The very token is here. So that's going to be the key. And then request body, Dall-E endpoint, request body, and this is the request parameters. Request parameters. And then here, okay. And so let's try to see if this works. Dall-E generate with arguments, and then we're going to write here. What are we going to write? A space car driving through a magic storm, for example, and that's going to be no modules. Cannot find what. Oh, because I probably did not install. What did I not install? What is this? Cannot find module. No module. Okay. Okay. No module. Okay. didn't print to the console, which is not cool. Buffer, file name. Okay, and then here, file name. Okay, but did I get this? Yes, space car through a storm. Okay. All right, so that looks good, I guess. Okay. So I guess we are ready to I guess we are ready to run this. Let me see. And this we probably don't need anymore. Here. Okay, so I think we are ready to to start. So what am I doing now? I am continuing with the previous video, and then what I would like to do as well is I need to finish this, and then I need to start to record the introduction. Okay, so let's do that. How's everyone doing, by the way? Mayur, how are you doing? It's been a while. Let's do this. And this here is what that example would look like. It's basically the same thing that we had before, but instead of relying on the OpenAI module, what we're doing is we are still parsing the command line for arguments. We're still getting the key from the environment, but then what we're doing is we're using Node.js version 18's feature, which is it has the fetch API. This is fairly new as of this recording, right? So what we're doing is we're basically defining what are the parameters of the request that we want to do to the API, which is going to be a post request, where we're going to be sending a JSON file, where we're going to authenticate ourselves with a bearer token, and where the body of the request, because it's a post request, it needs to come with the body, is going to be a string representing the request with the prompt, the number of images, the size of the image, and getting the response back as a base 64 blob that we then sparse and that we then save as a JSON, that we just save as images. So what I can do here now is I can say, well, can I generate, for example, a space car driving through a magic storm? And then let me do, for example, V-Ray, magic art, hyper realistic 8K, for example. And then I'm going to do that. And then you can see that I have my files here. It's doing its thing. And then it's going to take it a little bit. And it generated these two new images. Woohoo! So it's a DeLorean, it looks like. And then the other one, this is pretty cool. Space car through the storm, okay? I'm not going to break down how this is done, but you can find this example in the GitHub repo with the examples of this video that is in the description. And then you're welcome to learn on your own, or just Google how this was done. The only idea here, the difference is that because the OpenAI module, you may or may not have access to it, you may or may not want to download it, it might change over time. Using a post request is a bit more of a lower level way of accessing the API. But if you have control and if you know how to do a post request, then it's much easier to just do these requests across other APIs. So I'm a little bit of a lower level person. I like doing things a bit more lower level and knowing what's going on. Sometimes I get annoyed when I don't know what the OpenAI thing is doing on my behalf and how it's doing the request, etc., etc. You know, so I sometimes like having this level of fine-grained control. Beautiful. And I think with this is what I wanted to cover for a Node.js example. But in the next videos on this series, we're going to keep looking at other ways of pinging the Dall-E API from other programming environments. And I think that the next one that I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to try to do it in C# in a console application. So if you're interested in that, come back and check out how I'm going to do that in the next video in this series. And if you like this, in the meantime, maybe you want to consider subscribing, liking this video, all those things that we do in modern YouTube times, okay? Well, thank you very much for watching this, and see you in the next videos, hopefully. Bye-bye. Okay, so then the next video, no, I have to record the introduction. And in the introduction, I would like to say, I would like to show this, like, hey, how to use the Node API. Not create image. Maybe I can just, and then I do this, and then I show, yeah, so this is what it looks like, a full-fledged example. And then this is how it looks like when you run it. So from the console, and then this is what it looks like when you generate it. I'm going to store all the other ones here, correct? And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say, what am I going to do? Node Dall-E generate, and then that's going to generate whatever I have here. And then I'm going to show you how to do it with command line arguments. That's going to be this one. And then the Node Dall-E with arguments, and for example, E is going to be, and this one I can probably do manually, I think. Yes, that one I can probably do manually. Okay, so I'm going to show that. Let's do this. Hello, this is Jose Luis here at Parametric Camp, and welcome to another new video in this mini series, how to work with the Dall-E API to generate images from text. So, I didn't like that. I'm going to start again. Bye. Oh, gaming FPS. Good to meet you, and thank you for watching the videos. It just takes practice, and it takes figuring out how to connect these things to the work that you're doing in your profession, and just trying things out. You know, it's just as simple as that, I think. All right, let's get to this. Can I get here? Hello, this is Jose Luis here at Parametric Camp, and welcome to another video in this mini series, how to use the Dall-E API to generate images from text. In this video, in the previous videos in this series, I have shown you how to do this with the terminal. I have shown you how to write Python code that pings the API, and in this video, I would like to show you how to use JavaScript and Node.js to work with the Dall-E API and request images. So what I'm going to show you is how to generate, looking at the documentation, how to generate an example that fully takes a set of parameters, like an isometric view of a miniature city and the size and how many images do I want. And then I'm going to be able to open a terminal and type node Dall-E generate, and then I'm going to make a request. I'm talking to the Dall-E API now. The Dall-E API is responding, and it just saved in my system these two new images of a miniature city with bokeh, tilt shift, etc., etc. But I will also show you examples of instead of having it hard-coded in your code, you will be able to say, well, DALL-E generate with arguments and say, the prompt is going to be a car flying through space in a ballerina dress, for example. And then one image, and then the size is going to be 512. And if I do that, I'm going to talk to the API and I'm going to get a response, and that response is going to show right here. So the car and the ballerina in this in this generation. Working with DALL-E is just so much fun. So I'm going to show you how to do this in 3 different ways. I'm going to show you the basic example, so basically taking what we have in the documentation and literally just making a copy and how that works in a simple example. I'm going to show you an example of how to extend that to take arguments from the console. So type in your own prompt and type in your own size. And I'm finally going to show you an example of doing the same thing, but instead of using the Node.js API for OpenAI, I'm just going to show you how to do it from scratch by doing a post request. What is this? By doing a manual post request to this endpoint. This is a bit more useful if you want to like really do things at a much lower level, and if you want to learn in general how to ping any API, following instead of their own modules, doing it from scratch. So let's talk in and more doing. Let's start with the simple example that comes in the documentation here. Okay. All right, so that was good. So I think all of these are done then. No. Okay, so what is the next thing I'm going to do? I'm going to do C#. Hey, Randa. Oh my God, how are you doing? I've been meaning to text you for like months, and we need to grab a coffee. You're here in Boston, right? Oh boy. Well, can you please text me and can we grab a coffee and say hi? I really want to know how you're doing. It's been a long time. Okay. All right, so we're here. And then here. And then the next one is C#, correct? Okay, so let's do C#. And okay. Okay, how are we going to do this? I probably want to start by giving again a brief introduction, because we can't assume that people know things. So probably I want to start with a small introduction and saying, well, if we look at the API, we see that we have examples for curl, Python, Node, etc. And we probably have examples, but for C#, because there's no example, we have to do it from scratch. So we have to do a post request. And and I probably want to also figure out where did I get this from. Okay. Okay, So I actually have an example here that I already did when I was preparing for this. So I had the bearer token, the encoding, ASCII, get bytes. All right, and then we make a request. We set the length of the sample. And then if there's a bearer token, we have to set authentication and header. Otherwise, we just stick to whatever. And then we get the stream. We read the stream. Hey, Sahid. Long time no see. Good to see you. How you doing? Response string. Okay, and then we deserialize the object, and then we figure out how to save it. Okay. And we probably want to start with an URL, and then we print that to the console, and then we install the package, and we do all these things. Okay. Okay, so let's probably get started then. So I'm going to open Visual Studio. Create a new project, console application. Yeah, I can get to that when we're in the video. Beautiful. So let's start from the basics. So if you remember from my previous videos, and if you haven't seen them, then I'm going to remind you again. If we look at the documentation of the API, we can see that in order to create an image, what we need to do is we need to make an HTTP post request to this endpoint here, this URL. And what we need to do is we need to send in the body of the request, we need to send a JSON object with the parameters of what we want. So the prompt, how many images, the size of the image, etc. And you can see the documentation gives us examples of how to do this directly from the terminal using curl. And if you want to learn how to do this, I did this in a previous video, so you're welcome to, there must be a card and there will be links in the description here. We also have examples of how to do it in Python. I also made a video in this playlist before, and we also have examples of how to do it in Node.js. But as of the recording of this video, there's no example of how to do it in C#. I'm sure that very soon after the publishing of this video, there will be NuGet packages to ping the Dall-E API, etc., etc. But for the time being, the only option that we have is to basically craft on our own a lower level HTTP post request to this URL. What that's going to involve is basically figuring out how to make post requests in C# and then making sure that the request that we put together has all the necessary information that the API requires. And then when we get the response, to make sure to deserialize that response in a way that we can extract the information that we need. So how are we going to do that? I'm going to show you an example of how to do that with a console application in C#. But what you're going to be learning can be applied to a Windows Form application or anything that is C# based. So we're going to start by opening Visual Studio. And then in Visual Studio, I'm going to create a new project that is going to be a console app that is going to be based on the .NET framework. So I'm going to either click this here from my recent projects, or I'm going to find that here on the templates. I'm going to go next, and then I'm going to find the folder that I'm using here in this one that I have here in order to drop that here. And I'm going to call this Dall-E API, for example, or I'm going to Dall-E API, for example. That's not, well, it's not a great name, but whatever. So I'm going to create a new empty project. And the project is going to be a console application. I'm going to scroll in. I'm going to console read key to make sure that I stop the program, etc. Read key. And this should be the good starting point. So I'm going to start this. I'm going to make sure that the window shows up on my screen because it always shows up where it shouldn't. So I'm going to let the system not position the window. And I got a simple console application. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to set up which are the parameters for my request. So first of all, I'm going to need to figure out where my API key is. I'm going to need to figure out where my endpoint is, and I'm going to need to figure out how to compose this JSON object for the request of the body. So let's get started. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to say, well, I'm going to define a variable called URL, and that's going to be the endpoint that I want here, okay? So that's going to be this here. Then I'm going to put it here and I have my URL now. Then the next thing that I want is my API key. So I'm going to call this the bearer token. It's kind of the fancy word for API keys. And then as we discussed in previous videos, in the video where I was talking about how to get the key, it's very, very bad practice to just write your key here, because then if you save the code, if you version the code, people could take and steal your key. So very often what we do is we store that key as an environment variable in our system, and then we fetch it from the code. I explained how to store a bearer token on your systems. If you don't remember that, please check my video on getting the API key for Dall-E. So that there should be a card popping up somewhere. And then what we're going to do is in C#, we're going to do this we're going to retrieve that variable by going to the environment object and using the getEnvironmentVariable function, so that C# looks at the environment and tries to find a key, a variable with the name OpenAI API key. This is the name that I gave to my bearer token when I saved it in my environment. All right. And then I'm going to need to create the prompt. The prompt is going to be a little tedious. I'm going to copy this, okay? And it's going to be a little tedious because it turns out that C# is not great at working with JSON files natively. So there's many ways I could go about this. If I want to do it the right way, I could use libraries, etc., etc. But because I just want to get the idea through, I'm actually going to go a little dirty. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write an inline JSON file, which is going to be the nastiest thing ever. But hear me out with this one. So I'm going to say the body of the request is going to be a JSON object, and I literally just copy pasted what I had. And now what I need to do is, because this is not valid C# code, what I need to do is basically turn this into a string. The way I would do that is by basically, I'm going to remove all the new line characters, correct? I'm going to remove all the new line characters, and then I'm going to wrap all of these inside of double quotes. But if you see, the problem is that JSON already has double quotes for each one of the keys and the values in my JSON object, which is also a problem. So what I need to do here is I need to escape the double quotes by using a / so that the code understands that I actually mean to have a double quote as a character, as opposed to meaning that I want to close the string. So I'm going to escape this, basically escape all the double quotes, except for the last one. The last one needs to be normal because I want to use them to close. And then what's next? And then that should probably be it, except for the fact that I want a nice, I'm going to be using the same message that I was using before, same prompt, an isometric view of a miniature city, tilt shift, bokeh, voxel, blah, blah, blah. Let me make sure that the string, that the body is working well. So I'm going to print this, and you can see that I have this JSON stringified version of the JSON file, which is looking good so far. And you can see that Visual Studio is already highlighting an intuition of the properties of this JSON object. Correct? Beautiful. So that is great. Now, what I need to do now is I need to do a few things. I'm going to need to prepare data for the post request. The first thing that I need to do is I need to make sure that this, which is a string, becomes bytes, becomes zeros and ones. I actually need to do this very, very low level in C#. So something that I need to do is I need to say, I'm going to create a variable called data, and the data is going to be a binary version of the body that I have here. So I'm going to say, I'm going to take the encoding object, which is an object that is able to exchange data between different formats. And for the ASCII, I'm going to say, I want to get bytes of something that has the form of an ASCII body, okay? And then if I were to print this to the console, you will see that we will have something strange. So we would have this kind of array of bytes, correct? Beautiful. What else are we doing? The next thing that I'll be doing is, for example, I'm going to prepare the actual request. In C#, making HTTP requests, it's a little tedious and verbose. You have to write a lot of code, but we could potentially just wrap this in a function or make it a bit more elegant. But I'm going to do this from scratch. So I'm going to create a variable that I'm going to call the request, and this is going to be a web request that I'm going to make, and then I'm going to create to the endpoint the URL that I have here. And just to make sure, I'm going to make sure that this is casted to an HTTP web request object, like this, okay? Therefore, beautiful. So this request, as you can see, Visual Studio is already recommending things that I would want to do. So the first thing that I also need to do is I need to make sure that the request has the right verb. So whether if it's just getting stuff from the endpoint, or whether if I want to send information and then get a response that is a function of that information, that would be a post request. So I'm going to actually go here and say, yep, I want a post request. And then you can see that the next suggestion, this is great. Visual Studio 2022 is amazing. The next suggestion that is giving me is that you probably want to set the content type, and that is true. So I want to send the content type. I want to set the content type. And because what I'm going to be sending here is a JSON, so you can see that it already gives me a suggestion. Hey, yes, it's an application. I don't even know why I'm making this video. This thing is coding the whole thing for me. Okay, what is the next thing? Exactly. I want to set the length of this request. Literally, I just want to say that the length of the message that I'm going to be sending is going to be the length of how many bytes I have in the data object that I just created. All right. Oh my God, this is just so easy. And you see, this one is not right because I don't want to set the content type again anymore. Okay. The next thing that I need to do is, because the API is not open and free for everyone, because I have a key, I have to, with my request, I have to authenticate myself so that Dall-E and OpenAI knows that it's me, it's not someone else, and then they know to bill me for the services and not someone else. So what we do here is we basically set what is going to be the authentication method. And what I'm going to say here is if the bearer token is different than null, so if it exists, if I do have a bearer token, then I will need to set credentials. So for example, those credentials are going to be system.net. And I'm literally copying from, because I never remembered this, I'm literally copying from my notes on the other side. I need to request that the expect 100 continue. I really don't know what this means. I'm going to be very frank. I don't really know what this means. And I also need to set the security protocol. So I'm going to set the security protocol, and that's going to be the prototype, the TLS12. So that's what I'm going to use to authenticate. All right. I don't think I need this. I think it's part of what I have already. And then for the request, I'm going to attach a couple properties. I'm going to say I need to pre-authenticate. That is true. And then in the headers of the request, I need to add attach to the headers, I need to attach my bearer token. In the case of Dall-E, it looks something like this. So the request, I'm going to, where are the headers? Headers I want to add, and I'm going to add a header that is going to have two parts. It's going to have first the authorization. It says I'm going to authorize myself, and the content of the header is going to be the word bearer, white space, and then it's going to be the API key. So that's going to be the bearer token. This is a very, very common thing to do when you're working with APIs that require a token to work with. Okay, so this is very similar to what we did also for the Python examples and for the Node.js example. Okay, beautiful. Now, what is the next thing? Well, if we don't have a bearer token, then we don't need to authenticate ourselves. So the only thing that we need to do probably is that the request is going to have credentials that are going to be the standard credentials. So that's going to be credentials, credentials cache dot default credentials. Oh my God, Visual Studio 2022 is just so good at auto-completing stuff. Beautiful. So that's going to be authentication. Okay. Okay. All right. How are we doing? Well, now it's requesting a timeout. I'm not going to set a timeout. I don't want my request to expire because it's taking too long. Okay. And now what I need to do is I need to take the body, and I need to use a stream to take all the bytes, all the zeros and ones, and send them to my endpoint via the HTTP request. The way that looks like in C# world is this. I'm going to use the using keyword to make sure that the stream that I generate is a one-off and that it gets shut down and cleared and garbage collected after, I have finished executing it. So I'm going to use using, and I'm going to say, I'm going to create a stream, and that's going to be from the request. I'm going to get the request stream. All right. So that basically starts the stream, and then to that stream, I can start sending information. So I'm going to say stream.write, and I'm going to say, I want to write all the binary, all the bytes that are generated from 0 to the length of the message. So this basically takes the stream and starts passing all this information, starting at the byte 0 and ending at the last byte. So at this point, I have already sent the information to the HTTP request. And then at this point, what is probably happening is that I'm waiting for the endpoint to respond with some information. So what I need to do now is I need to write some I'm going to actually perform request. And here I'm going to say retrieve response. Okay. What is that going to look like? What I'm going to do is I'm going to create now, very similar to what I did here. Instead of a request, I'm going to create a response. Okay. And then web request. Excuse me. HTTP web response, and then here I'm going to say from the request I want to get the response. Beautiful. I got my response, but my response I also need to use a stream to get the information from it. But before we do anything, let's just try if this actually works. So can I write to the console? Can I write request response, or request response? And then, for example, one thing that we may want to take a look is does the response have a code, a status code? The status code is a number that tells me, for example, if it's 200, it means that everything went well. If it's 404, it means that the endpoint doesn't exist. If it was 400, it means that you're forbidden or unauthorized. I forget, but you can Google HTTP status codes and you can see a bunch of those. And something that I can also add here, for example, is going to be the description, or I think this is going to be fine. So let's just do this. So I'm going to run this. You can see that it's taking a little bit of time, but then eventually the response said, okay. Okay, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to print this. It's going to take a little bit of time, but eventually I do get an okay response, correct? Yes, because remember, APIs and HTTP requests, they may take time. So that's why doing asynchronous for this is typically better. Anyway, so we got the status code, which is, I'm actually going to leave that on. And then from the response, what I need to do is I need to take the body of the response and I need to take it and fetch it, and so that I can use it. For that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a very similar thing to what I did here. I'm going to create a stream and I'm going to read that stream. So for example, well, I'm going to call this response string, and that's going to be from stream reader. I'm going to create a new stream reader object, and then I'm going to get the response stream and then read all the way to the end. Correct. I love the autocomplete. I'm really liking it. And yeah, why not? Let's just print it to the console. Why not? And see if it works. Let's run this code. Are you excited? We are about to get something, hopefully, from Dall-E. Yes, nice. So we did get an okay response. We did get a JSON object, so I can now copy this. I can paste it somewhere, for example, in I can open a text editor and I can paste this, and you can see I can wrap it. And then, for example, I can click and see the image. Choo-choo, nice, we're getting it. Okay, beautiful. Okay, well, if that's what we wanted, we are probably already done. But for the sake of completeness, and in order to make this example similar to the ones in the previous videos on this playlist, what I would like to do now is I would like to take the JSON response, so this blob of data, and what I would like to do is figure out how to take the image and how to save it to the system. So let me help you. Let me help you go and do that. Ooh, I'm very high. I've drunk a lot of coffee. So, okay, I'm gonna take a minute. I need to take a bio break. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Okay. Uh, mm. Did I close the window? I did close the window. Okay, so I'm just gonna start it again. What happened? Okay. Okay, so what am I going to do? Say, Hey, Morena. Thank you very much. I appreciate your words. Thank you. Okay. Mm, how am I going to tell this story? Mm, how am I going to tell this story? Well, we have the object here. Um, I want to, yes, I'm going to use this here. Okay. Okay. The API reference is good here. Okay. The challenge in order to do this is going to be threefold, I think. First one is going to be, well, the response that we're getting is a JSON file, which is basically a really large string. So what we need to do is in C# we need to be able to deserialize this large string into an object that we can get the created property from, the data property from, or the URL, the base64, whatever properties from in an easy way. So for that, we're going to be using a Nugget package that I'm going to be showing in a second. The second challenge is going to be, well, now we have the way we're creating the response now, we're getting an URL, we're getting a link to somewhere on the cloud that we can go and we can download this file. So we could go the route where we take the URL, we download the JSON, we take the URL, and then we create another request where we download that image to the system. But I find that version a little more tedious. So I'm much more interested in showing you another example where in the response, instead of taking an URL, what I would like to make sure is that the format that I'm getting, instead of being an URL, is a full base64 blob representing the image. Or in other words, all the pixels of the image that I'm getting encoded in base64 format. If you want to learn what that means, I explained that in my previous videos, so you're welcome to check it out. I think it was in the Python one, probably where I explained that. And if not, it was in the Node.js one. So what I would like to get is the actual information, and then turn that information into a bitmap that I'm going to save to my system. Okay? So those are going to be the three steps that I'm going to follow. So first of all, let me make sure that I have a way to deserialize JSON objects. The way it's going to be is that I'm going to use a module for that. I'm going to use a package. So I'm going to go to references, right click, manage NuGet packages, and then go to browse and literally type JSON here. And you're going to see that JSON.net is going to be, no, it's not the first one that shows up. JSON.net. Yes, Newtonsoft's JSON 2.48 billion downloads. So you can see it's a very popular package. So I'm going to install this. Okay, I'm going to install this package. And then in my references, now I have Newtonsoft JSON, which is a very nifty library for working with JSON information. And I'm going to import it and use it here. So Newtonsoft JSON. All right. So now this library gives me deserialize JSON. There are multiple ways to use this library to deserialize JSON objects. I'm not going to get into the details. I could do a full live stream and a full series on that. But the way I'm going to do this is using a trick, which is taking the JSON string and deserializing it to a dynamic object. The idea here is that I don't want to have to define a class with properties and methods, blah, 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 and then ask Newtonsoft.json to match that JSON file to the structure of the class. What I would like to do is just turn it into a dynamic file, a dynamic object, so that it can have any properties or any methods. And therefore, it just makes things a bit more easier. So I'm going to declare a variable of the type dynamic. And if you haven't seen this, this basically means that the type of the variable can change throughout the lifetime of the execution of this program. And then I'm going to call this, for example, response JSON. And I'm going to say from JSON convert, which is part of, oh, see, look at this, it's already there. This is crazy. JSON convert, I'm going to deserialize this object into a dynamic type object, and I'm going to take the response string and deserialize it there. Okay. By doing that, let's take a look at what we get. I'm going to then print response JSON. Okay. And if I do that, I'm probably going to get some object with all the properties. So let me see what I get. Yes, so this was the string, and this is the JSON object that I have deserialized, which looks identical. But the beautiful thing is that now I can access its properties. So for example, I'm going to not print the string. I'm not going to print the full JSON. I'm going to print here from the response JSON, I'm going to print the created property. So when it was created. Now, not updated, I want to print the data. And then from data, I want to print just the first element. And from here, I'm going to print the URL from the first element. And from here, I want to print the URL property of the second element. Because this object is dynamic, I can just basically ping any property, because C# doesn't know if that exists or not, but it allows me to do that because it's a dynamic type. So I'm going to now, you see, and then I get printed the created object, the data object, the first URL, and the second URL. So this is going to be very useful to now fetch properties from the JSON object in a similar way that we would do in Python or in Node.js. So I'm going to hide this, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this. I'm going to create a new body, okay? And this one is going to be a little different. So this one is going to have only one object. Oh, I can have two objects, why not? And then the size, and then I'm going to add a new property that's going to be response format, and then another escape double quote, colon, escape double quote, and this is going to be B64 JSON. And by doing that, if I may actually, so for example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to print the data property. What you're going to see is that now the response is not going to be URLs, but it's going to be this like massive blob of characters representing, oh, you see, and it's actually taking a lot. Yeah, you see, all of those are the bytes representing the image. It's the actual data of the images. Okay, beautiful. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to take those blobs as strings and I want to convert them to images. So let me write a for loop here for int I equals 0, I is less than response, what is response JSON dot data dot length, or maybe it's count, yeah, and then here, and then I'm going to say let me take the base 64 block. So that's going to be from the response JSON data, and then here the object with name b64 underscore JSON. All right. And what do I have there? And then what am I going to do now? I'm just going to print it to the console and see if it's working. Base 64. I'm going to reduce this to 1 so that I'm not overpaying for all of this. And I'm going to make this also smaller so that it's not such a huge blob. Okay, so I'm just going to request one small image. Let's see if I print the base 64 blob. I get the response, and you can see, and then if I scroll up, you can see that yes, it is. It starts here and it goes all the way down. And I could just scroll down and copy paste this into an online base 64 deserializer, and it would work. Okay, so I have that. Now what I want is I want to create a bitmap image, and then I'm going to call image, and I think I may need to import system drawing. Import using system drawing. Yes, so now I have system drawing here, correct. So now I want to now turn this base 64 into an image. So for that, I'm not going to go over that because it's not very difficult, but it's also part of not what I want to cover here. So for that, I actually am going to use this nifty piece of code that Dewald Storhosen has written, which is basically this function that takes a base 64 string and converts it into a bitmap by just using a buffer, converting from one, using memory streams, and then just making sure that it handles the closing of all of these properly. It's not very difficult, but I'm just going to copy paste it from him. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to scroll all the way down, drop here a function, base 64 string to bitmap. Okay, and then I'm going to call this function and I'm going to paste the base 64 blob. So this image is now a system drawing image. So I could, if you were on Windows Forms, you will be able to render this, you will be able to show it on the form, etc., etc. It's like a C# image, if you will. And then what I would like to do is I would like to save this as a file to my system. So similarly to the examples that we've done before, what I would like to do is I would like to write a file name, and the file name is going to be something which is going to be of the type I want to call it image underscore, and then it's going to have here the timestamp, and then it's going to have here the number of the image. So for this timestamp, I need to figure that out. So let's call this Unix time. And then for the number, it's going to be the number in the iteration of the for loop. Okay. And for the timestamp, let me remember. So I'm going to create this Unix time. Okay. Yes. And then that's going to be from, I actually have it here. So I'm not even going to pretend that I'm bringing this up. I'm just going to use from the time object, I'm going to fetch the now property, convert it to seconds so that I don't have like decimals or milliseconds or whatever, and then turn it into a long integer. Okay, beautiful. And then with the file name, then it's just as easy as image.save to the file name that I'm specifying. And let's just make sure that we also give some kind of warning like, hey, saving image to file name. Oh, sorry, file name. Beautiful. And I think with this, we should be fine. Are we ready to try this out? Let's give it a try. So I'm going to do 2 images here to make sure that 2 images that are small, and I'm going to run this, and then it runs. It's working, and I'm printing. Sorry, I forgot. Saving image to 1, and I guess the other message was hidden by the blob. Okay, so I guess, yeah, I'm not going to print this anymore. So now let's go and check out the files. So the files is going to be in C#. We have the project that I just created, Dall-E API. And this is the code that I'm working on here, but because when I hit start in debug mode, what Visual Studio does is that it compiles the console application. That console application gets compiled into binary debug. So you can see here, this is the console application. And then these are the 2 images that I just downloaded. So this one and the next one. And actually, if I wanted to run, because it's compiled now, I can just go, if I wanted to run this without Visual Studio, it's an executable file that I could share with anyone right? So for example, from the terminal, I could just say Dall-E API, and what I'm going to get is I'm going to get this. I'm going to get all the above, and then I'm going to get the two images. Okay. Beautiful. Just remember that if you share this with your friends, which is something that you could share for them to use, they will need to have, for this to work, they will need to have an environment variable on their system that looks like OpenAI API key, and they need to have their OpenAI key in their environment. If they don't, this thing will not work. Okay. Beautiful. Well, I think with that, that's probably what I wanted to cover today in this video. Just like we did in previous videos, because console applications take arguments, I could actually write something where I could type Dall-E and I could type the prompt, and then I could type the number of elements, and I could type the blah, blah, blah. But I guess at this point, I think I'm just going to leave that as an exercise for you, the viewer, if you want to have some fun trying this out. And in the meantime, I think what I would like to do now is I would like to move on to showing you how this looks like in other environments that are based on C#. And for example, the first one that we're going to try is how to make Dall-E API request inside, for example, of Grasshopper. How about we try that? Let's do it. I'll see you on the next video, Dall-E API inside of Grasshopper. Bye-bye. Beautiful. Okay, images, image generation. Okay. Let's see. Let's do this. So this is going to be the introduction to the video of how to how to use the Dall-E API using C#. Okay, let's do that. Hello, this is Jose Luis here at Parametric Camp, and welcome to another video in this mini series, how to use the Dall-E API to generate images from text. In this video, I would like to show you how to do that using the C# programming language. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a console application that is going to have some parameters, it's going to have like the prompt as a JSON file, etc., etc. And when we execute that, the system is going to ping the Dall-E API, it's going to retrieve an image with the prediction, and it's going to save them to the folder. And because we're going to create a console application, it's going to be something that you will also be able to use from your terminal. So if I clear the screen and I say Dall-E.API, I will be able to, from the terminal, to create this request and to download it to the system. And you can see that now I have these two images in my system, which are the request of these tiny cities that I just created. Also, because it's an executable file, you might be able to just share this with your friends, with your colleagues, and give them the option to generate images from their systems, okay? As you're going to see, the way we're going to do that is that because there's no API here for C#, we're actually going to be using the raw way of using the API, which is using HTTP post request in C#, okay? But I don't want to disclose much more. Why don't we just start doing this? It's going to be simple, it's going to be fun, you're going to love it. Let's take a look at how to do this. Okay, C# is done. Oh, I'm tired. Okay, so C# is done. C#. Okay. What is next? Grasshopper. And how did I do this in Grasshopper? I guess the way we're going to do this is by writing an HTTP request in C script component, probably. Okay. Can we do argument? Okay. So background white. Okay, I had this gray. I hate gray backgrounds, as you already know, but I had a project that I was working on. I needed like a fancy visualization, so okay. So I've done this. I have an example that I prepared before. We're going to be using. We're going to be using. I see. I can probably just copy paste this, and this is my better token. Does it work? I think I need a new one. No. Yeah, unauthorized. This is an old token. I need to update it with a newer one. Where do I have my newer token? I mean, I can just create one here right now. Create a new key. Yes, copy. And then here. And then it's making the request, and I did get the request. Yes. Okay. So I can probably park this here. And I probably want to use this. Did I close the C# project? I did close the C# project. So I probably want to start by saying that it's going to be just very similar to the C# work that we did before. Are we still there? Sorry, I'm not seeing you. Yes. Very similar to the C# work that we did before. This one. Okay. I wonder if get environment API, it also works. I guess I can just try. Sorry. I'm just going to here A is equal to this thing. Does this work? It does work. Huh, okay. All right. So I guess I can do that instead of this. So how am I going to do this? I'm going to start by saying, well, we need to do a post request. We're going to say use pretty much the same code we used for the C# script. We're going to use pretty much the same code we used for the console application in the previous video. And we need to prepare and we need to prepare, so I can start by having this already. I can start by having this already and then start just plugging things in. Okay, and then here, Dall-E request. And then it's going to be pretty much the same thing. Yes. Oh, and I'm making another request. Oh. And then, okay. I'm just going to leave that there. And then I'm going to start here. I'm going to start a Grasshopper. And I'm going to copy here. I'm going to write here Grasshopper. And I'm going to save this file there. Save. Okay, so I'm going to copy this here. Where are you? This here. And then I'm just going to copy this here. The number of elements, and then the format, and the URL. And then I'm going to paste here a panel. I'm going to plug everything here. That. And all the data that I need. Okay, so that's good enough, I think. Okay. And then I'm going to save this somewhere. I'm going to save this somewhere. Dall-E Grasshopper, Dall-E generation, Dall-E API, for example. Okay, so that's probably what we're going to do. So I'm going to talk about this post request. So we're going to take very similar to what we did here. We're just going to adapt this code from the previous video, and then how we're going to start. We're going to start with Rhino. I have this Grasshopper definition. I have the API, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm going to start by getting the environment variable, from the token, from the token from the environment variable. And then I'm going to compose the request, and I'm going to compose the request, and I'm probably just gonna copy paste the code from, yeah, and just get it done with real fast. Okay, that's the plan. Okay. So let's get started. First things first, if you haven't seen the previous videos, I very much recommend you watch the previous videos in this series, how to get your API key, how to store it as an environment variable, and maybe you want to check some other examples of how I've done this, especially the one where I did it in a console application in C#. So in a nutshell, the way we're going to do this in Grasshopper is that because we don't have a Grasshopper plugin or a component that does this for us, we're going to have to write our own. And the way we're going to do that is by adapting the concept of making an HTTP post request to this endpoint using and sending the right parameters in the body, so the prompt, how many elements do we want, the size, etc. We're going to do that in the Grasshopper way, which is basically going to be pretty much adapting the same code that we wrote for the for the C# console application. And we're basically going to take from here all the way to here, and it's going to be almost copy and paste into a C# component, right? So let me show you what that looks like. So I have pre-prepared a Grasshopper file where I have here the endpoint, and then I have all the data that I want for my body. So I want the prompt, I want one element, I want an image that is a little bigger, and because it's Grasshopper, I have sliders that I can use control this, or whether if I want a bigger image, etc., etc., right? And then the first thing that I need to do is I need to figure out where my bearer token is. Remember that in C#, what we did was we used the get environment variable method, and we found the OpenAPI key that we already stored in our system. If you don't know what this means, please check my previous video on getting the API key and storing it as an environment variable. There should be a card somewhere popping out here, or there should be some links on the description. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a very simple C# component. I'm going to call this OpenAI API key. All right, I'm going to give it a name. I'm not going to have inputs because it's not going to read from anywhere. And then here, I'm going to take the key. So I'm going to go in there, and it's going to be the simplest component on earth. Basically, the key, the output is going to be get environment variable. And here I'm going to say OpenAI API key, which is the name that I gave to my environment variable. If I hit run, you can see that now I can see the key here, which is not great practice, but this is Grasshopper. We can't really obfuscate the data that flows between wires. So, I mean, this is as good as it gets in not storing your keys with the code that you distribute to other people, okay? But it's as much as we can do. All right, and then after that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a C# script component. I'm going to call this Dall-E request, for example. And then the inputs are going to be the following. I want to have the URL for Dall-E. I want to have here the bearer token. Okay, I need to have the key input, and then the body of the request. Remember, this is going to be an HTTP request, post request, so it comes with a string in the form of a JSON file that is the body of the request. All of these are going to be strings. So string, and string here. And the output is going to be here, the response. Correct. We got this. We're going to expand this. And literally, I'm just going to copy paste here a bunch of code that is going to be copy pasted from the C# application that we did in console. So literally, I'm taking the body, I'm turning it into bytes, I'm composing the request, I'm making sure that it's a post request with a JSON body, with the length of the body. I'm setting the protocols that I need for authentication, and I'm also setting the header of the bearer token. And then I'm using a stream to write all the data with the request, and then to wait for the response and turn it into a string. And that is what I'm going to be outputting by the component. So let's go ahead and do this. It doesn't work because there's nothing here. And also the copy pasting, I'm missing a bunch of the libraries that we need to make this work. So I'm actually going to copy paste this here. So I'm going to go all the way to using, and then in here, I'm going to add the request, the text, and the IO, which are libraries that are needed for those operations. And now you can see that all of that is working now, but I don't get a response yet because I haven't plugged in here. I haven't plugged in the URL. I don't have the bearer token. And then I also don't have the body yet. The body, I can't really plug the body like this because the body, remember, as per the specification, it needs to be a JSON file. So what I could do is in Grasshopper, I could just do similar to what I did in my console application, which is I could painstakingly just take everything and stitch it together, give it the properties, escape the double quotes, etc., etc. But it's kind of a pain in the down there. So in the case of Grasshopper, I'm just going to use the JSON library, which is Andrew Human's library, which is amazing and super easy to use for JSON serialization and deserialization. So I want to serialize JSON. What that means, I'm going to add here an input, and this is going to be called the prompt. Okay, And then as I plug this in here, you can see that it generates a JSON object that has a property called prompt with the value of this. Here, I am going to enter an input called n, all right? And then I'm going to plug in this. And you can see that because n knows that this is an integer, it already gives me a clean number without the double quotes, etc., because the JSON library is really, really freaking good. So now the size, I'm going to add another property called size, and this is a string here, so I get the string. And then I'm going to get another property, which is called the response underscore format, which for this test, I'm going to keep as URL. Okay. Beautiful, because this is now a fully qualified JSON object with all the proper formatting, etc. I might be able to pull this in, and there's a slight lag, which means that something is happening, yes, and very good. You can see that the response that I get is exactly what I was expecting. I was expecting from created data and blah, blah, blah. And if I now, for example, copy the data and I paste the data on some text editor here, like a new file, and then I take this, I copy paste it into a browser, I will be able to see the image that I just requested. Oh wow, this one is nice. It has a small seaport here of sort, like harbor. Beautiful. Okay, so this is working so far. But now, you know, because it's a JSON object, etc. Maybe I want to deserialize this a little better. So I'm going to keep using JSON to deserialize this. I'm going to plug this in here. You see that I have two properties, created and data. Those are the two properties that are at the first level of the JSON object. And then from data, I probably want to also deserialize data and fetch URL. And URL is this one single object. All right. So now it's much easier to just copy paste this. Correct? Beautiful. So we now have a very simple Grasshopper definition that is able to talk to the Dall-E API and retrieve images generated with a custom prompt. Now, is there any way that instead of just the URL, can we actually get the full image down inside of Grasshopper? Okay. So I'm going to take now I'm going to, okay, and then it's going to be b64.json. And then data URL, and then so yes, of course there is such a way. So what I've done is I've basically copy pasted this whole thing and pasted it down here. The only thing that I have changed is that instead of the URL format, I'm going to be requesting that the response is in base64 JSON format. If you have not seen my previous videos, what you can choose as part of the body to request that instead of an URL, you get a base 64. Base 64 is basically a way to encode all the pixels of the image in a string of characters, and then it's very easy to convert that back and forth between image and base 64, etc. So if you want to learn more about that, I recommend you check my previous videos on this topic, probably the one where I was doing this example in Python. I think I explained that over there. Anyway, so The point here is going to be that if I now turn this on, I'm going to execute the request. I'm going to get the response back. The data is going to look something like this. So you can see that I have a base64 JSON object, and if I deserialize this object, I get the base64 blob. And I could plug a panel to look at this, but because this is such a big string of text, the panel may actually be laggy if it doesn't crash. So I'm just not going to even bother there. And then what I need to do is now with that image, I need to somehow visualize it. So something that I can do is, for example, for this purpose, I'm actually going to be using the Firefly component. It has a lot of really good utilities for computer vision and for image processing. And because I'm fortunate enough that Andy Payne is my friend, he actually helped me by implementing these two components or three components that I don't think come with the regular Firefly distribution, which is encoding images to base64 and decoding them. So I'm going to decode this here from base64 to a bitmap, and then I'm going to use the, what is it called? The load bitmap? No, I'm going to use the bitmap painter to see this image, okay? And then you can see that I can see the image here. And now I think I should be able to like right click and save this file, or I should be able to recompute all this thing and then get another prediction that is going to be here, is going to be shown. Is it? Another one. It took 5 seconds for each one of the requests. It's kind of a lot, okay? But you can see that you can get the request. And if I were to change this, for example, and change some of the stuff, this would regenerate, okay? So if you don't have this version of Firefly, I will attach as a dependency to this file, I will attach the DLL that has this base64 and base64 serializing and deserializing components. And therefore, with that, the only thing that you need to do is you need to install the standard Firefly, and then you need to replace the DLL in your installation with the one that I will attach in the sample files in the code that you can find in the description of this video. Okay. And then I think that's it. I think that was getting requests for images from the Dall-E API using Grasshopper. I think after this, I've covered a lot of what I wanted to do. Perhaps I might do a video sometime soon on how to use C# and do these requests in Unity. But I actually think that at this point, given how I've shown you how to do it in C#, you might be able to do it yourself. So maybe there's a video for that coming up. Maybe there's not. Just stay tuned for that. But I think also something that I would like to try is how to do this in P5.js, which is a platform that I also enjoy a lot. So maybe after this, there might be a video also on how to make a P5.js sketch and then request images from Dall-E and render them in real time. And with that, I think I'm good. Thank you very much. If you liked this video, maybe press the like button, maybe share with your friends, maybe say hi in the comments, maybe join our Discord community, or none of the above, whatever makes you comfortable and happy. Thank you very much, and see you in the next videos. Bye-bye. Okay, and here we go. Saved. Okay. Oh, and that was a lot. And that was a lot. Okay. And the last example that I want to run through is, what is it going to be? Is it going to be, it's going to be P5.js. Oh boy. Okay, and here is this P5.js, and the sketch is here. This is kind of a little too much. Okay. And also this probably doesn't work anymore, correct? Yeah, I need to redo that. Okay, let me think through this in comparison to what I've done before. So we have URLs, request options, we have setup, we have draw, we have an image here. So how am I going to explain this? I'm going to explain this by creating a basic setup and draw, having an image that is loaded, for example, but yeah, I need to simplify this example. It's a little too complicated. Or maybe I could just start with a simple one and then I could extend it to something that has a text box, something that has, yeah, but that's gonna take me some time to figure out. Oh, I didn't do the introduction for the previous one. Folks, I did not do the intro to the previous video. Oh boy. Okay. All right, let's record the introduction. And then I want this here out of the way. You know, maybe the P5JS, I can do it some other day because I'm a little tired. So maybe I just do that some other day. And I also do the nice thing where I have the prompt and the input. Maybe I could do that for fun now as an example. Yeah, maybe I want to do that. Mm-hmm. Hello, this is Jose Luis here at Parametric Camp, and welcome to another video in our mini series how to use the Dall-E API for generating images from text inputs. So in the previous videos, I've shown you how to do this from the terminal, in Python, in Node.js, and in C# using a console application. For this one, what I would like to show you is how to take what we've learned from the C# example in the console and then port those techniques to Grasshopper. So the way we're going to do that is that I'm going to show you an example. So I have a Grasshopper definition where I have all the inputs that I was working on. This is not, sorry. Starting over. This is not the one that I was working with before. This is not the one that I was, yeah, this is not that one. Sorry. Okay, so I guess I'm starting over again. This is the one, exactly. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, so just give me a second, please. Okay, let's do this. Let's start over again. Hello, this is Jose Luis here at Parametric Camp, and welcome to another video in our mini series, how to use the Dall-E API to generate images from text. In the previous videos in this series, I've shown you how to do this from the terminal, using Python, using Node.js, and using C# in a console application. So what I would like to do in this one is to show you how to use what we've learned from the C# example and then bring it into Rhino and Grasshopper and be able to generate images directly from Grasshopper. You will see that the technique is just very similar. It's just making an HTTP request in from within Grasshopper, and it looks something like this. It's a C# component that when I turn it on, it takes a few seconds to make the request, but then it takes all the inputs, the prompt, the amount of images, etc., and it gives me the URL of an object that I just generated and that I can now see here. Or if you want to extend this a little better, you can actually request the entire object as a B64 JSON blob. And then using Firefly, you can deserialize that and show the image directly on your Grasshopper canvas, which is kind of nice and nifty. Okay. So it's actually quite easy. It's going to be super short. It's literally going to be copy pasting from the console application to here. So let me show you how to do this and let's enjoy trying things out. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so well, so then that's it, right? Because like I said that I was probably going to not do P5.js today. It was a little too much and I'm tired and I need to edit all the videos and start publishing them. So I think I'm just going to do that. And then I will tinker with the P5.js example this evening, for example. I will play a little bit with that, have the example ready, and then next time I stream, I just record that example and share it with folks. Yeah, I think that's what we're gonna do. Because I'm a little done today. Okay. Well, that was fun. Actually, a lot of fun. So if for any of you, if you're curious, I'm actually teaching many of these techniques also to my students at the university for the seminar that I'm teaching on human-computer interaction. So this idea of how can we create environments where humans and AIs collaborate and talk together and create things together, right? Which I find a super, super fascinating topic. Anyway, thank you very much for being here and spending your Friday afternoon with me. And I will see you on the next live stream whenever that happens. I don't know. I've been a little all over the place lately, so I just stream when I can. But yes, thank you very much and see you on the next one. Bye bye.